Do you believe in miracles? I mean, like someone getting up out of a wheelchair, being healed supernaturally in such a way that their lives are changed. That kind of miracle, where there's just no denying that God intervened in that person's life in a supernatural way. Do you believe in that? Whether you do or whether you don't, I'm about to tell you something you cannot deny because it happened to me. What I'm going to give you is a first-hand account of a miracle from heaven. It would be like someone getting up out of a wheelchair, walking, and never needing it again. You see, this miracle that happened to me is going on 25 years. And that affliction hasn't been back one single solitary time since I said those prayers. I waited 25 years. People who know me know about this, but no one really knows the full extent or the full story other than my wife, really, because she was around before and after the miracle. One thing I want you to take away from this is if you get nothing else from this other than, yes, God still does miracles. Yes, he does. Emphatically, he does. It happens. He's not sitting in heaven watching you suffer, withholding your miracle from you until you say or do the right thing. That's just not happening. So this isn't about why God does and doesn't do miracles, because I've even had instances in my life since this in which I believed God for things that would require a supernatural intervention and they didn't happen. So this isn't about any of those things. This is, God did this in my life and I want to tell you about it. That's it. So not to belabor how it happened, but at some point in the season, I developed an injury that progressively got worse. It started off as an ache, and then we were practicing for a halfback pass, the last game of the season, because I had done really well. I was ranked in 2A rushing. The seventh game of the season, I was like ranked number 9th in the state, which was a big deal for a little town kid like myself. So I was doing really well. And defenses, the coaches had noticed, were really beginning to focus their efforts on stopping me. And so one of the things that was a very productive play we did was a halfback sweep. And so we were going to do a halfback sweep pass. In other words, everything looked exactly the same except for two things were different. The tight end was going to block for 3 seconds and then roll out into the flat on a slant. And then I was going to take that ball, take it, put it like I was going to run it, but then stop in that back foot, pull it out, and hit him with it. And I grew up throwing a football, whether it was a schoolyard, in my backyard, or whatever. I could throw a tight spiral, and as long as it was within like 30 yards, I could hit you in the numbers with it, in stride. So this, everybody knew. I grew up with these friends of mine. They knew I could throw the ball good enough that this was going to be a touchdown. Like, they knew. Everybody was going to crash when they saw that I was going to do the sweep. And he was just going to be standing out there all by himself on the other side of everybody else. We just knew. Everybody was excited. So we're practicing. It's just pads and shoulder pads and helmets and shorts because we're not doing anything but going through plays and recovering from the previous Friday. And so they pitch me the ball and I step back, and I cock it, and I just remember hearing this ripping sound and the ball just fluttering like a duck that's been shot out of the sky in mid-flight, and thinking to myself, well, that was terrible, but the pain was just intense and overrode everything. I fell to my knees. I pulled in my arm. It didn't dislocate, but man, it hurt like nothing I'd ever in my life, and remember hearing that ripping sound. So we made it to the playoffs. We actually won that game. The halfback pass was off, obviously, because I couldn't throw, and it didn't do any good if it wasn't me throwing the ball, because that was kind of the point. I was ranked in the state in rushing, and I accounted for a big portion of our offensive productivity. So that was off, but we still managed to win. And we made the playoffs. Last game of the playoffs, I was playing on defense. This kid was coming around me. He was way faster than I was. I really wasn't that fast. In fact, I never really broke any of my runs for touchdowns unless I was like within 30 yards because someone would always catch me from behind. I wasn't terribly fast. It was just quick. I would pop through the line. Anyway, so his kid's about to run around me, and I know if he gets past me, he's gone. There's nobody else on the team who can catch him. I'm not the fastest person on the team, but the fastest person's like on the other side of the field from me, so there's just no chance. So I dive and do what's going to be a horse collar tackle, which wasn't illegal in those days. And I get the top of his, I remember grabbing the top of his shoulder pads because I knew this was my last hope. This was a dive. And pain. I honestly don't remember anything else. I couldn't tell you if the kid scored. All I know is I didn't tackle him. And the coach on their team, thank God for coaches. Thank God for coaches. Coach on the other team, they started tending to me. I do remember that. I think the kid scored because I do remember the coach tending to me and everybody around him jumping up and down and screaming, yay. It could have just been the fact that he was running. Maybe somebody caught him. I doubt it, though. This guy's had my shoulder back into place before my coaches could get over from the other side. And, he told them he just separated his shoulder. He had put it back in. They took me into the locker room and proceeded to tell me that that was it. I couldn't go back into the game. We were losing. We were going to lose. And I knew that was it. It was heartbreaking. I cried hours. I cried the whole rest of the game. I cried on the bus ride home. So I graduate high school. I dislocated my shoulder once a month. Pretty much just became a routine. I got really good at putting it back into place. I knew exactly what I needed to do. One time, though, I had to be actually, it was about 2 or 3 times I had to be taken to the hospital. But those experiences were so bad in that it was dislocated for so long. And the recovery time, because the trauma of being separated for so long was so bad. I did everything I could to try and get it in myself, because if you've ever experienced a dislocation, it's intense pain, but the moment that thing goes back into a place where it's supposed to be, it's like flipping a switch and it's gone. The pain's over. Now the soreness that sets in later because of the way the muscles spasm around the joint. I woke up one time in the middle of the night in a lucid dream of, oh no, I've separated my shoulder. Now in the dream, I'm not laying in the bed, but come to find out, I would roll over on my back and throw my hand up on my head and sleep like this. I never knew this before the day or night that motion, my shoulder had become so bad that it just separated, it dislocated. So I had to start sleeping with this tie that you see here in this picture that I had gotten for senior pictures. I started sleeping with that tied around my arm and around my waist to hold my arm tight to my side while I slept because, I didn't want it to come out while I was sleeping anymore. So sexy picture, sexy hair. Look at that stud. Nice tie. The first doctor I saw, he thought it was just a normal sports injury. It's pretty common for there to be tears in the subcapsular tendons that encompass that joint that, flex enough to allow you to move it, but are tight enough and strong enough that it holds the joint in place. Not a big deal. They just sew the tear together and people go on and live normal lives. He thought that's what it was. I kept describing to him that I really felt like it was worse than that. He thought, I don't know what he thought. I can't read minds. So I'm just hopeful. Hey, great. I hope you can fix it. He takes me into surgery, rolls me in, puts me under anesthetic. I'm hopeful. I come out of it, and I notice my arm's wrapped up. And the first thing Mom says is, they weren't able to do the surgery, son. And I'm like, they what? Well, come to find out. After they put me under anesthesia, what they do is they shoot muscle relaxers to the area so that, their muscles aren't tense when they're trying to work on it. The doctor said that when he shot muscle relaxers to me, his words, not mine, my arm fell off onto the operating table. He said the only thing holding it in place apparently are the muscles and the skin. All the tendons in the capsular area are gone. Or they're not gone, they just ripped and draw up onto the bone like this. And that's that. There's no way for them to fix that. Not in those days anyway. They may now, I don't know. I don't need it now though, hallelujah. So that not being a satisfactory answer for my mom, she set me up with an appointment for one of the foremost surgeons, orthopedic surgeons in our area in Houston, Texas. So I go to see this doctor, and he had already reviewed what the other doctor had written. He examined me, had me rotate my arm, and there were some ways where I told him, I can't do that. It's going to dislocate my arm. And as much as I would like to do that motion for you, like I know what's going to happen, and my brain just won't let me move my arm that way. So he's examining me, and he just stops and looks at me and says, well, based on everything you've told me and everything I've seen here and what I read about the doctors, there's nothing medical science can do for you. And then he proceeds to tell me that he actually has the same condition, that he has what's known as a globally unstable shoulder. That's what they labeled it. So this is someone who had the capacity to get it done if it was possible, but he didn't. And he told me I couldn't. And I can tell you from all of the times that I separated my arm. One time I was playing 3-on-3 basketball at lunch at work, and I went up with my jump shot. I bring the ball up, I shoot it, just normal motion. The guy guarding me blocks it. Now, he didn't like volleyball, swat it. He wasn't, trying to smack it down. He just blocked it, stuck his hand up there, and it knocked the ball back into my arm while it was right here. Just bumped it, and it separated my shoulder. It was just that easy. I slept with that tie around me because at night, if I did this, it would dislocate my arm. Because the only thing holding my arm in joint most of the time was basically the position of my arm and the muscle and skin around it. So when I say the situation, there was nothing that could be done medically. That's what the doctors told me. Then Jesus. Because I'm telling you right now, since the day I prayed a prayer looking in my mirror in my bathroom before my kids were born, Jesus, I knew that I knew. Barb and I had been listening to the Word. I listened to the Word at lunch. I listened to the Word on the way to work, on the way home. When we were home, we had it going on the TV. We just left it on preaching, and it would go from one program to the next. It didn't matter who it was. We listened to it. We went and bought audio cassette tapes of the Old and New Testament. This was this massive plastic book thing just full of cassette tapes. We wore that thing out. I mean, like literally, the tapes were so used they couldn't play anymore. We were just feeding on God's word, and we're just hungry, and we just hit this place in our lives that we couldn't get enough. And so I was standing there just convinced. I knew, Jesus, you healed me thousands of years ago. This is done. You can't convince me otherwise. You would have had a harder time telling me, nah, you can't. I would have looked you straight in the face and said, you're crazy. There's just no way that the blood of Jesus, that life that he could have lived, that was worth living, that he gave up, that he died, he sacrificed. You can't tell me that I'm not healed. There's nothing. No, it wasn't even part of the equation. But I'm standing there not sure what to do. In other words, I'm convinced of it, but I didn't know. I'd never done anything like this. I'm not in a wheelchair, so that it's obvious. You do what you try to stand up. I didn't know, so I felt like God told me, take a tennis ball with you to work and throw it. Play catch with yourself. You bounce it off of a wall, kind of like using a backstop. But I knew how to throw, so I took this tennis ball thinking, okay, that's it. Yeah, do that thing that I know. It all started with the throwing motion. That's what tore it up. And I had a nickname in college. This is one way you can verify. You can verify that this is truth. What I'm telling you is not speculation, it is fact. My nickname in college, Chicken Wing. Chicken Wing. Why did I get the nickname Chicken Wing? Well, it wasn't because I like chicken wings. I don't really care for chicken wings. It wasn't because I don't like chicken wings. That didn't come into the equation. These people didn't know I ate chicken or not. It came from when I threw the ball, I looked ridiculous because I had to keep my shoulder. I had to keep my shoulder in place and my elbow close to my body because that throwing motion, even having my elbow up just 6 inches, 6 to 8 inches, if I did that, it was going to dislocate my shoulder. Throwing motion was out of the question. Tennis was out of the question. I once dislocated my shoulder underwater because I had done a 1.5 forward flip off of a diving board, and when I hit the water, it separated my shoulder. So I had to swim to the top, one-armed with a separated shoulder, doing my best not to inhale water. A throwing motion out of the question. Out of the question. Tennis was off. I had a good friend from high school who graduated the year before me. We enjoyed playing tennis that year before the incident. We would meet in the summertime, and it was good fun. It was over. I tried it once. I literally just tried volleying. We were volleying, and boom, separated my shoulder. That was it. I cried because I enjoyed that time with my friend. I couldn't even do tennis. This person who enjoyed athletics so much, it was all pretty much done. Any of it that I did. I was once playing roller hockey with some friends. Roller hockey. I separated my arm when I fell to the ground and tried to catch myself as I was falling. It separated my shoulder. It was a bad enough separation, I almost blacked out trying to get it back in. I remember getting tunnel vision and thinking, I'm going to wind up in the hospital, and that sucks because it's hours before they get it back in. And so I took one last ditch effort. I'm about to pass out, and I just, and thank God, flip the switch, and I'm good. I didn't play anymore. Then Jesus. I'm telling you, God heals. Almost 25 years ago, God healed me. I threw that tennis ball. The first time I actually tried to do the motion, it was freezing cold, and I was sweating bullets. I mean, sweat pouring off of me because the internal conflict. Have you ever heard of how animals can be trained to stay in their cages with electric shock or something, some sort of pain treatment? Or how an elephant can be held by a small stake driven into the ground. An elephant that can pull a tree up by its roots, being held by a small stake because they've been trained. Mentally, their mind tells them if they do this thing, it will bring pain and harm into them. Well, I had this going on. I didn't realize how bad it was, but really, yes, I believe without a doubt that Jesus had already healed me. The physical manifestation of my arm being repaired was already done, and I was just realizing it that day, looking in the mirror and praying. This is a testimony of what God can do if we believe. When we believe that Jesus did everything that he did on Calvary, when he paid the price, when we believe that God is watching and he cares. He's not sitting up watching us suffer and doing nothing. That's a lie straight from hell. that tennis trophy was as impossible as a lame man stricken to a wheelchair, standing up and walking and never needing the wheelchair again. It was on that level. But God brought me out of that place, and He can do the same for you. Because God still does miracles.